This video is about transferring markings and applying the interfacing. Continuing with making my 647 Boxy jacket, I now need to cut out the interfacing. Before I remove the pattern from the main fabric, I need to transfer all the markings, as the interfacing uses the same pieces. Snip the notches and tailor tack the dots. Here is a clip to show how to do tailor's tacks. Check the info button for the whole video on transferring markings. A woolen type fabric is better marked with tailor's tacks. Chalk wouldn't show up. Choose a contrasting thread. We will stitch with the thread double and no knot. Take one stitch, then another in the same place. Pull up, leaving a decent loop. Then snip. So you have a loop and two ends, so that when you pull the fabric apart and snip, you will have a tuft of threads. Also mark other useful features, such as fold lines, the centre front and the waistline. If you don't want to cut off the seam allowance from your pattern, tracing carbon paper is useful when it comes to cutting out your interfacing. Check my site for suppliers. This brand comes in various colours and in big sheets. But it's more manageable if you cut it up. Anchor your pattern with a couple of pins. This is non-woven interfacing, so there is no need to line up the grain line. I find the pointed tracing wheel is best. Again, check my supplies page. You may need to go over these lines with chalk, but they are clear enough to see. Alternatively, just cut off the seam allowances. Again, this is non-woven, so I can ignore grain lines. I have ironed the interfacing to all the main pieces, so I'm ready to sew the bodice together. A word about interfacing first. There are two main types of interfacing products. Iron-on, you can tell it's iron-on, as you will be able to see the shiny adhesive on one side, or sew-in, and within these types you have several weights and also non-woven and woven. When it comes to sew-in, there are two basic methods. First method, you cut it with the seam allowance and baste it onto the wrong side of each piece. When I started making my own clothes many years ago, all interfacing was sew-in. Of course, you don't have to use interfacing products such as Violin. You can use many basic fabrics from canvas through cottons, linens to silks such as organza, soft or stiff, depending on the support you need. Machine your seams remove your basting and then trim away the seam allowance. After pressing the seam open, you can see the interfacing is caught in the seam stitching. The second method involves catch stitching the interfacing in place. The stitches are made into the seam allowance and so will not show on the right side. This gives the best finish, as there is no added bulk in the actual machine stitching. Download this pattern from angelakane.com. Subscribe for all my sewing patterns, or purchase them individually. I'm continuing making this pattern up in the next video. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.